Good afternoon, everybody. I'm joined this afternoon by Florbela Yates, who heads up Equilibrium. And the topic we're talking about today is obviously fees and investment management, as well as the diversification of portfolios, how important that is. And Florbela will share with us some of her experience in doing that. Hi, Florbela.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for the opportunity to be on EBnet.
My pleasure. So let's start with the fees thing. Obviously, fees are always important, and give us a bit of your take on that aspect, please.
So look, fees are important because obviously they detract from performance. If you had similar performance in two portfolios and one cost more, it would detract from the overall performance. And I think one thing people don't always understand is the impact of fees, but also it's important to look at performance net of fees. In other words, after all investment fees. So one of the big reasons I think that the discretionary fund managers have gained momentum, both locally and internationally, has been the ability to negotiate preferential fees for our retail clients. We are, as Equilibrium, we are discretionary fund manager. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of the Momentum Metropolitan Group, but we are completely independent DFM. So it's important that we are able to negotiate fees with all our providers, and that's both on the asset management side as well as on the list platforms. Now, I think on the list platforms, we haven't yet really had the ability to drive down prices. I think DFMs and asset managers that are linked to the larger life offices have the ability to perhaps pass on some of that fee saving, but that as an industry, we haven't really been that successful. Where we have been successful is as asset gatherers in negotiating preferential fees with the underlying asset managers and funds.
You talk about reporting performance figures, but fees are often shown. Are they shown? Is it a standard in the industry to show them net of fees or gross of fee? What is the kind of standard going on in the industry right now?
Yes. So in the retail industry, most asset managers report net of fees, but not all. So it's always important to check.
Is it an issue?
I wouldn't say it's an issue. I think it's becoming more standardized,
okay. All right.
But it's different between the retail and institutional space. Okay. So in the institutional space, you often have all-in pricing and you tend to report gross of fees, whereas in the retail space, it is more common to report net of fees. But I think what is net of fees is also sometimes a little bit confusing. So if you've appointed a discretionary fund manager, you have to take into account their fee, as well as all the underlying fees that they use in the construct of the portfolios. And I think what sometimes happens is clients or advisors don't necessarily look at all of them. So they might only look at the DFM fee in isolation. You need to actually take the DFM fee, add the underlying manager fees, and then compare that to what you would pay if you were putting together a portfolio yourself or investing in a balanced fund or any fund for that matter. And then you're comparing like with like. And it also depends on the construct. So the fees would be different depending how you construct a portfolio. If you're using a balanced construct, you typically get charged for the maximum allocation to growth that fund is allowed to have in their peer group. But through the cycle, you might not be anywhere near that maximum. Whereas if you use a building block approach, you only pay the growth asset fee on the assets that are actually sitting in growth building blocks. So there's a slight difference in how they get charged. But at the end of the day, you should look at your total investment charge. And then the last thing would be whether it attracts VAT or not, depending on the vehicle that you're invested in. If it's a VATable wrapper or non-VATable. Oh, and also the other thing to consider when you're considering fees is whether the fee you're paying is commensurate with the service that you're getting. There's a whole range of discretionary fund managers out there, and they don't all offer the same services. So, for example, if you are looking for strategic asset allocation, tactical asset allocation, manager research, portfolio construction, attribution, reporting, the production of fact sheets, there could be a fee that covers that, which is different if you're just appointing a DFM, for instance, to do your manager research. So I think the last point on fees would be to make sure you understand the service you're getting, and firstly, that it meets the needs you're looking for, and secondly, that it's commensurate with what they are providing, because the ranges do vary quite widely.
All right. Thanks for that. The other thing I wanted to ask is about diversification, and I think different people have a different understanding on what it means to diversify a portfolio. Can you maybe shed some light on the different concepts, please?
So one of the sayings people often use in investment management is that there is no such thing as a free lunch, except diversification is a free lunch. And what they're mainly referring to is that if you don't put all your eggs in one basket, but you can build a portfolio with slightly different views or a variety of views, it does two things. Firstly, it allows clients to stay invested when markets are very volatile because you're not skewed to one view. And secondly, it also hedges your bets to a certain extent. Now, it's about getting the right balance between an over-diversified portfolio that's just going to give you the average, and you're paying an active fee, then you might as well be buying a passive, and finding the areas that really do add value and increase your probability of getting to your benchmark or outcome. So at Equilibrium, we follow an outcome-based investment philosophy. And what that basically means is that the outcome is aligned to the advisor's benchmark or the need that they are solving for. So, for example, a client would say to us they want us to put together an income solution, or they'd like us to solve for a CPI plus 2 or CPI plus 4 or 6 over a particular time period. Now, to build a truly diversified portfolio is a little bit more than just taking 3 or 4 underlying funds and split funding. And I would call that split funding rather than diversification. When we put portfolios together, we go a little bit deeper. We start with strategic asset allocation. We believe very strongly that the biggest determinant of getting to a benchmark or outcome is making sure you're in the right asset classes. So we spend a lot of time ensuring we're in the right asset classes, but that's not enough. That does increase the probability of getting there, but it doesn't necessarily get us all the way. So to make it better, we then look in each asset class, what are the strategies that we can employ or the tools that maximize our ability or probability of getting to that outcome. So in the South African equity space, for example, we look for exposure to managers that have a value bias, managers that look at earnings momentum, and managers that we define as quality managers. And then we go even further and we say, okay, if those are the strategies we're looking for, do we then execute passively, or do we execute fully actively, or smart beta strategies, or a combination of them? And the very last bit of the process is then identifying the managers that we believe are best able to execute on those strategies. So what it does is it gives you different views in the portfolio. So regardless of whether value is running or quality or earnings momentum, hopefully you've selected managers with skills or a combination of active, it could also be passive and smart beta strategies, that then allow you the ability to get to that outcome. And then there are a few other things that come into play. For example, if you've got a stable core using just the passive allocation to the actual market, you then have the ability to give your active managers a little bit more scope, so they can then take on a little bit additional risk. So you're not constraining them, you allow them to fully apply their skill, and that's proven quite effective. So it's a little bit different to just split funding. It's understanding how the managers execute, what the turnover in their portfolios is, what stocks they're holding, how they do in certain market cycles. And it allows us the ability to tolerate underperformance by one or two of the funds that we use for a little bit longer without our clients necessarily feeling that huge volatility they would if they were in that single fund alone.
Right, so Florbela, thank you very much. Thanks for your time and your insights. It's been very interesting discussion. So thank you. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Chris, for the time and for listening to us. Have a lovely afternoon.
You too. Take care.